Hi, good morning, everybody. Everybody awake? How many hangovers? How many severe hangovers? Right? This is still only one, or only one honest woman in the whole room. That's what it is, right? And now we take the acid test for entrepreneurs. Who in this room is saying, I feel really bad for all those other people in the room because I'm getting the 200 grand? Okay, right. That's the spirit of a true entrepreneur, and I hope you do. So, by the way, all of you hiding in the back, there's at least 100 seats down here. Come on down. No punishment for falling asleep, and sort of cutting class or cheating in your startup class is like cheating in your parachute packing class. It doesn't matter till you hit the ground. And so I would encourage you to try to pay attention. I will try to do the same. And I'm actually very, very excited to be here. Both my parents went to NYU, and the way your parents always tell you the romantic story of how they met and all of this, I believe I may well have been conceived in the bushes behind Lawrence House on the NYU Heights campus. Never quite got them to fess up. But anyway, so I have a special fondness for NYU, and particularly growing up in Stuyvesant Town, we used to chase all the co-eds here, way back when, they would actually pay attention. And what I want to try to do today is sort of three important components. First, I want to give you an overview of how to think about not the code that goes into your startup, not the product details, but the most important element of any startup, which is customers. And so how do you think about them literally from the first day of your sort of entry into this process? Secondly, I want to give you an overview of the business model canvas, which is, if you will, an architecture for thinking about the components of your business. And then third, we'll take a break somewhere around, right, I guess at lunchtime. We'll do a couple feedback sessions for some brave volunteers that are probably the most eager to go after the $200,000. And then I want to spend it said 15 minutes. I used to be a rock and roll DJ, so I can do a 45-minute talk in 15 minutes. I promise. No, WGVA, 1240 on your radio dial. Maybe we'll split that baby, and I'll do a 30-minute sort of introduction to, okay, now you have this canvas. What do you do now? And as those of you who've seen our book will know, that the very first thing you do, as it says on the very first page of the book, is get the hell out of the building, because there are no customers here in this building, and there are no opinions that matter, i.e. opinions of customers. And so you, as the founders, need to get out and get this feedback directly. And we'll talk a little bit more about that sort of along the way. And so the talk that you're going to hear is sort of draws mostly from the two books on the left, but also from another wonderful, helpful sort of book, The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. How many of you have seen, or how many of you have read The Lean Startup? Not so good. Okay, how many of you have cracked the spine of the Startup Owner's Manual? All right, that's encouraging. Well, I guess also getting it for free probably helps. But two other books I would recommend strongly, and we're going to talk about the whole concept of the business model and how you use it to think about your business. It was developed by a really brilliant young Swiss named Alexander Osterwalder. It was actually his PhD thesis at the University of Lausanne in Switzerland. And one other book has nothing to do with what we're talking about today, but everything to do with what you are likely to do with your entrepreneurial careers. If you haven't yet read the Steve Jobs, Walter Isaacson biography, curl up for a long weekend with your favorite chair, your favorite bottle of wine. It's just a magnificent series of life lessons about how to think about building great businesses. And so just very briefly, I figured out who is this guy standing up here in the front of the room, right? I figured out way back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, I had a spectacular job at WINS Radio as a senior editor, paid about $250,000 a year in today's dollars. I was 22 years old, and I'm sitting there typing on my Royal manual typewriter saying, I can't do this for 40 years. I got to go start a business. I started a bunch in college. I started a couple in high school. As wonderful and lucrative as this job is, it's just not for me. I also knew that I was sort of hardcore unemployable, and that it was a union job, so I was protected. But anyway, and so in the 41 years since I gave my notice at WINS, I've done 7 startups, 2, by any reasonable definition, pretty much home runs, a couple base hits, and a couple of wonderful tax losses. And since sort of retiring unsuccessfully for the 3rd time about 10 years ago, I've invested in about 20 startups, 7 IPOs, 6 implosions, and sort of the whole spectrum along the way. And I now, having spent literally 2 startup years, round the clock, full-time, working with Steve on the Startup Owner's Manual, we now travel around the world doing sessions just like this, hoping to sort of light the fires that your wonderful team here at NYU can keep stoking and pouring more gasoline on, because we believe that this is a very helpful architecture for something that everybody always assumed for the last 50 years, that startup success was a combination of insanity, sleeping under your desk, cold pizza, Jolt Cola, and lots of caffeine. And that was about all the sort of architecture or structure there was to it. And interestingly, in 1996, Steve's 8th startup, Epiphany, which had 4 people at the time, hired my 7th startup, Marketing One-to-One Peppers and Rogers Group, to help them do their customer development, oddly enough. It wasn't called that then, but and after Steve shot about 3 of my partners that I sent in to work with him, I said, I'm in the Valley every other week, I'll handle this guy. And we worked very closely together for about 2 years, launching Epiphany. The best news was he had no money at the time, so he paid us in stock. The even better news is at a moment in time, Epiphany was worth $8 billion just before they put that little pin in the side of the thing many of you remember, or at least read about, the internet bubble. And about 3 years ago, Steve said, how many of you have had exposure to 4 Steps to the Epiphany? Okay, very few, all right? It's much more of a West Coast phenomenon, but Steve, when he retired from Epiphany in 2000, all the universities in the Valley say, hey, why don't you come join us, teach a class in entrepreneurship?